How do we deliver best-in-class products today while keeping an eye on the horizon of Earth industries? By using everything at our disposal. Because at Viaflex, creating innovative solutions to complex customer challenges is why we exist. Viaflex, protecting Earth, promoting industry.
Home. It's more than an address. It's where you step out and snuggle in, where you share and dream and do. So you shouldn't have to go far from home when you need care. Whether it's for something common or complicated, we believe you deserve world-class healthcare, no matter where in the world you live, because every patient, everywhere, means the world to us. Here for all, here for good. Sanford Health.
Since 1956, Aerostar has been challenging the limits of technology.
Aerostar is an aerospace and defense contractor that works on high-altitude stratospheric balloons, radar systems, and protective wear. And our mission is to connect, protect, and save lives.
Today, Aerostar is a diversified technology company that continues to be a world leader in the design, development, and manufacturing of aerospace products. For decades, Aerostar has been at the forefront of high-altitude research and has a distinguished history of collaborating with university, scientific, and military partners.
Back in 1956, there was a lot of new technology being developed. There was a lot of testing for pre-NASA space race scientific research. Some of the first work that they were doing with the high-altitude balloons was before they had put people up in rockets.
For years, Aerostar has collaborated with NASA to use high-altitude research balloons in Antarctica. Felix Baumgartner was carried by an Aerostar balloon to the stratosphere, from which he completed his record-shattering space dive. Aerostar has spent decades refining high-altitude balloon technology, designing, engineering, and manufacturing the end product. It is a technology that can get balloons to the stratosphere reliably, inexpensively, and from anywhere in the world.
A satellite is reasonably expensive to put into space, and it doesn't just happen quickly. The balloon is orders of magnitude cheaper than that. What a balloon can do is it can navigate to a certain point that you can specify, and it can linger there for weeks or months on command. I can put it where I want it or in the vicinity of where I want it for a long period of time, reasonably inexpensively and with short notice.
The possibilities only grow as Aerostar develops smaller hardware and smarter technology.
We say not even the sky is the limit. If you take what we know about flying in the stratosphere that we didn't used to know, add into that better battery technology, better solar technology, better computing and navigation smarts, I think there's a lot that can be done that hasn't been done before.
Finding a place to belong is everything. It's where you can make a difference, where you're heard, where you have a team that supports you, and the benefits you deserve. At Avera, you can find that place. You belong at Avera. Apply today. Avera.org/careers.
Oh, hi there. We are Daktronics. We create some of the most sophisticated and iconic scoring and audiovisual systems on the planet that ensure your projects deliver impact. We're a passionate group of designers, fabricators, project managers, sales, service, digital artists, tech gurus, and engineers. We design, code, test, fabricate, bend, punch, insert, paint, pack, ship, install, and service dynamic audiovisual systems. Oh, and we also create the incredible content that goes on them. We do everything, but most importantly, we listen to our customers and together find successful solutions for their brand and messages to deliver impact. From the small projects to the large, That's what we do. We innovate, we design, and we light it up. We are Daktronics.
At Premier, it's about doing what's right for our customers, employees, and communities, giving our time and resources to support what matters most: academics and athletics, arts and entertainment, families and economic development. When you have the right people, financial solutions, and a spirit of service, you build one of the nation's strongest financial organizations. First Premier Bank and Premier Bank Card. Investing in you. Member FDIC.
Today we are in Hartford, South Dakota, extending our services to the community here to bring high-speed internet to them. Some of the work they've been doing today is a little hard, a little difficult. Drilling, hooking up to interduct, pulling it back, setting vaults, pulling fiber. Terrain's a little rocky out here, but they got plenty of guys out here to get the job done.
As a Hartford representative, it's very important for our residents to have a good quality of life. Part of that quality of life is having high-speed internet.
When you think about a state like South Dakota that's very dependent upon agriculture, it's essential that we have great connectivity into these rural markets.
The combines, the different equipment is using software, and so broadband is very needed in those areas.
Our customers rely on our products and services for so many things: education, work, healthcare, and even play.
Our employees live all across the footprint, and we're involved with everything in day-to-day operations, but really outside in community involvement.
We do have another entity too, Midco Sports, where we come out and we broadcast local high school, college games. I'm invested, I live here, and I want to be able to provide services to the community.
I love working with the Midco team. They have been nothing but fabulous individuals in our community. They have volunteered for different opportunities, so we really are grateful that they have partnered with us in our community.
I'm really proud of the projects that we do to bring rural broadband to these communities, because I see it as an enabler for them to continue to grow and thrive for years to come.
We're dedicated, we're experienced, and we're local. So we're not going anywhere.
We've been a part of rural North Dakota and rural South Dakota for nearly 100 years, and we're going to be here for the next 100.
You okay? Oh, no. Okay, so let me do this all over again. See, practice always makes perfect, right? Denise Gazzetta, Vice President of Talent and Workforce for the Sioux Falls Development Foundation. Thank you. I'm here to introduce a wonderful panel. We have Michael Olson he is the Chief Human Resource Officer from Avera. Welcome. We have Rochelle Teason. She is the Vice President of Human Resources from Salmons Financial Group. Welcome. And then we have Jamie Dooley, who is the Site Manager for Citibank here in Sioux Falls. Welcome. So just a couple housekeeping tips for everybody that's in the room. We have a lot of different people here. And we can also have people come up and sit down on the floors. And we also have some seats over here if anybody wants to sit. Okay. But just know that this session is being recorded. We do have a lot of people that are getting continuing education, and that's really important. Know also that if you are seeking continuing education, certification points, that's the code that you can enter for today's sort of program. All of our programs are worth 10 points, so a lot of good stuff there. And then we will have a moderated Q&A. So this session, and I'm kind of going to read from my notes here, if I may, is really about hybrid and remote work and the tie that we have to really employee retention. It's also tied a lot to kind of a generational shift that we're seeing in the workforce, okay? Some of our future workers, okay, are right here in this room with us today. So we're gonna be talking a little bit about that. We do fall under for the people that actually want to record this under each individual session for sure. We are gonna be highlighting the people domain. This is about engagement and retention of employees. Okay, so let's kind of talk about what's happening globally, nationally, and also within our community, okay? We know that technology continues to transform, okay? If we looked back prior to COVID, we probably had about a 10-year window where we thought that we would see AI in the workplace. We thought we'd see more automation. We thought that we'd see a lot more of the technologies that we're talking about here today kind of come in a nice phased approach. But then COVID happened. And what happened is that curve got accelerated, okay? It also got accelerated at the same time that we're seeing a lot of our existing workforce is getting near to retirement, right? So that brings with it a lot of change, and you're seeing that. If we look at our community as a whole, okay, and we're gonna talk about this a little bit later, but we are growing steadily. We are growing with controlled growth. We had 7,000 people that moved to the Sioux Falls area last year. A lot of them working now for our Forward Sioux Falls employers and other employers like Avera and Salmons and City. But we continue to see that shift in where workplace preferences is happening. And that's really due to a lot of different things. COVID, number one, taught us a pretty good lesson. Life matters. People want more meaning in their life. They want more work-life balance, right? The other thing that we're seeing too is that the shift with generations, we're also seeing where people are getting near to retirement age. As they kind of leave the workforce, we're also seeing that younger generations that have been on the internet since they were born pretty much can work anywhere and feel really plugged in and connected. So it's a different type of conversation we're having, okay? If you look at sort of the population growth, in a few years, we're gonna surpass the 300,000 in our MSA, right? When I moved here, we were at 192,000. We're now, in just a very short period of time, gonna be over. And so that's why a conversation that we're having today with our employers really is important, because as we grow, the one thing we wanna make sure of is that we are growing together, okay? We're also seeing, I mentioned a little bit about what was happening within sort of our workplace. There's 5 generations working side by side. I'm a proud Gen Xer. I'm the mother of two 15-year-old twins that are Gen Z, okay? So we're seeing that we have people from the silent generation. We're seeing people that we have baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, and then Gen Z, and we're all in the workforce together. So that's where we're talking about a little bit of a shift, because as we see people, kind of the silent generation and baby boomers retire, they're getting replaced in large sort of groups from millennials. So anybody in here a millennial or will admit to it? Okay. So a lot of good stuff, right? More of that things that we wanted to see with work-life balance. When we talk about technology, and I want to take a step back. So I talked earlier about the fact that we thought we'd have this 10-year kind of phased approach for introducing technology in the workplace, right? Where we were getting people used to automation and robotics and kind of this phased approach with AI. We kind of accelerated that because of COVID. And you're seeing quickly, if you look at this graph, you're seeing that it's going to continue to accelerate. Now, what this graph also shows you from a financial standpoint is for every dollar that's invested in technology and that's used, there's a return on that, which is huge, okay? A little bit about me, I was in a bank for many, many years, and so everything had an ROI assigned to it. And so I kind of like this because it not only shows you the return on the investment, but it kind of shows you those jobs and those activities that we're seeing, where we're making those investments. Awesome. So I do want to introduce our first, and I've already kind of introduced Michael, but I have to say, for an organization the size of Avera, 300 plus locations, just great. One of the things that I am always impressed with is how connected, whether the people are in the offices or they are remotely, every single one of your employees is really connected, and that's hard. So let's welcome Michael.
All right, thank you, Denise. And I will say I am a self-admitted millennial as well, so nice to be here with everybody. So I wanted to start with just a brief overview of Avera Health, because I'm sure everybody has heard of Avera, but just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of Avera in totality. We have about 20,000 employees, just over 20,000 employees, depends on any day, right, with turnover and new hires that happen, in over 300 locations in 100 different communities across 5 different states. Okay, so we're a very regionalized group of providers here in the upper Midwest. And we are sponsored by 2 groups of sisters, Benedictine and Presentation Sisters. And we carry on their legacy. They came here over 100 years ago to provide healthcare. Really, they came here to teach, but ultimately ended up providing healthcare into the upper Midwest. So we carry on that legacy at Avera Health. Okay, as I said, over 20,000 employees. Remote workforce today is about 5% of that employee base. Hybrid work, we would classify hybrid work being that at times you can work at home, but some of your job is in person as well. We put at around 10% of our workforce. About 15% of our workforce have some kind of flexible work arrangement out there in their roles today, and that continues to grow. And although we operate in 5 different states, our employee base is across 30 different states. So one of those kind of key differentiators as we look at where do we find our future workforce is where else can we find those who want to come join our mission. The mission at Avera Health is to provide a positive impact in the lives and the persons and the communities by providing great service guided by our Christian values. So if we can find individuals who want to join that mission, and Denise mentioned that we've got many that rally around that mission at Avera Health, we're all very in tune with that mission, that work location becomes less and less important because our passion is our mission. So I just want to provide a little bit. I know, I think Mayor Paul Tenhaken mentioned our unemployment rate in the state of South Dakota is just under 2%, right? Finding workforce is a challenge, but I want to paint the picture just slightly differently for healthcare specifically. So you'll see up on the screen, in 2021 to 2022, South Dakota had a net loss of over 1,800 RNs. So that means that we lost that many more than we actually gained into the workforce at the same time. So in that time frame, about 4,700 RNs left the workforce due to retirement, profession, leaving the profession in totality, moving out of South Dakota, inactivation of their license. So it might be that they took a completely different career path. COVID really exacerbated that. So it was already happening, but COVID really put a strain on healthcare workers in totality, right? And you'll see then in the state of South Dakota, this is our top 10 roles, healthcare occupations projected to be in the greatest demand. So 9 out of the top 10 roles in South Dakota, the greatest demand over the next decade is healthcare. I've been in healthcare for over a decade now. I will say that this is not abnormal. It was like this, the prior report as well, probably 8 out of 10 as well at that time. But healthcare continues to have that workforce shortage. So we're continuously trying to innovate within the healthcare space around what can we do differently, how do we do the work differently, and how do we bring remote or hybrid work into our environment regularly. So there are a number, though, of barriers that come with that. So in healthcare specifically, I don't think we've fully solved the solution of taking care of people without a person involved, right? We need the people to see people to take care of them. So that face-to-face requirement in healthcare is a barrier, and that will not change. So we know that that's a major barrier for us to move to a more heavily remote workforce. We will continuously have that barrier in healthcare. Regulations, it might be something that others are not necessarily challenged with, but in regulations in the healthcare space can dictate what roles can and cannot, what services we can provide remotely and not remotely because it's tied to a reimbursement. There are times that in-person care, in-person work is required for different regulations or different parts of our reimbursement rates. So we have a number of barriers that we face to make that transition. I'm sure that everybody here who is part of an employer anyways, is experiencing some kind of their own unique barriers. I just wanted to paint the picture a little bit uniquely here for Avera and healthcare in general. But we've had a history of adapting in the past, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute, about a couple different scenarios that we've already deployed and where we're headed then, as well as Avera Health, and how we continue to enhance that, what the next wave of that is. It will be a continuous cycle of change, but we will be sharing momentarily here what our next wave looks like, just to kind of paint a picture of some of the things that we're doing. But our focus has not necessarily been, how do we get more jobs to be fully remote? It's how do we augment the roles that exist today? Because so many of our roles require that in-person care, that in-person touch, our goal is to say, how do we do that work differently through remote support? How do we make the lives of those who are providing the care easier, better, a better work experience for those patients that we're serving through supplemental or role augmentation through introducing remote or flexible work arrangements. So our focus is always the patient at Avera, and then it's how do we adapt how we accomplish that goal through some changes to individuals' roles. So I'll share that here momentarily. But Avera has an innovation history. So just to make sure that if you didn't know this, we've had a remote workforce. We have had it for decades. Telehealth has been around for decades. We had an organization that was founded by Avera called Avera eCare that transitioned a couple years ago to Avel eCare. So that used to be a part of Avera that is now its own independent business. That business, when we were running, it was in over 30 states. So we've got a history of showing how we can do work differently at Avera and how we can continue to enhance remote work in that culture throughout our organization. And then like I said, we do continue to pursue what's the next wave of innovation that we can do in healthcare and how can we get that accomplished. So I'll share that with you now. So the next wave that we're working on right now, and it started launching earlier this year, is what we call virtual patient monitoring and virtual nursing. Okay, so virtual patient monitoring, I don't know if you know this, but in healthcare, there are unique diagnoses that require individuals to have at times one-to-one care. So one person sitting in a room with a patient. And that is one of the biggest challenges that we have as an organization is how do we find workforce to that level of care and how can we do that differently? So we've started doing remote monitoring of patients And the reason why those individuals require that one-on-one care is because of fall risk, most commonly. And obviously, we give patients directions on minimizing those risks, but if there are cognitive issues that go along with their diagnosis, sometimes those are forgotten, right? So we've introduced remote patient care through remote monitoring. And what that did is it allowed us to take that work from one person sitting in a room with a patient to now 16 patients being monitored by one individual. And with that, we've used technology, so it's the adoption of new technologies as well, to alert us of when somebody is moving in a way that might be a risk for falling. So then our individuals who are doing that remote support can identify that and provide interventions. It might be as simple as providing a notice within that patient's room, because we're using both video and audio in the room to communicate with our patients. But it also might be an alert to the nurse that's actually there in person. Again, that role augmentation, it's not something that that person who's physically there has to be doing. We can now bring that off-site, right? It doesn't have to be right there in the nursing wing, for example, of providing that care. So since we launched that back in May here in Sioux Falls, and happy to say that of those being remotely monitored, we've had 0 falls, which is tremendous, right? That we've been able to introduce that technology, introduce new remote support, and provided the same exceptional care that we strive for at Avera. We're now introducing, in fact, we just exceeded our first month of remote nursing care as well. So we've elevated that even further to say, what can we do? How do we take the work off of those very strained RNs that I painted the picture for earlier? How do we do that differently? And what we found is by identifying what the role of the nurse is, that there's many tasks that are completed that aren't direct patient care. And we want to make sure that if our nurses are by the bedside, so they're providing the direct care, we want to take as much of that overhead off of them as possible. And so we've augmented that with remote nursing. And remote nursing in that circumstance is, for example, anyways, admissions. So when a new patient comes into our hospital, we can provide a remote admission through a remote nurse who then can provide that remote opportunity for our employees to retain them and also to find new employees to help support that by providing that admission. And we found that we've actually been able to reduce our admission time through that remote admission process. And we're working on the next phase of that being discharge education as well. So as individuals are coming into the hospital and leaving the hospital, that we're able to augment a nurse's role by providing some remote support from a nurse colleague. All right, so those are just a few of the examples here anyways of what we're doing at Avera to try and continue to push into remote and hybrid work environments. And so I'll hand it back over to Denise.
So this is actually showing you exactly what's happening within our community, okay? So this is showing our current population, and then as people are coming close to retirement, you can see the changes. And it's really important to recognize, we always talk about the fact that we need to meet people where they're at and kind of meet them where they want to be, and not necessarily as a community always think about what's going to be best, right, for us as employers. And that's one of the shifts, okay? That's one of the things that's really, really different if you look at each generation, okay? So with that, there's also another kind of interesting thing. If you look at, again, ask even yourselves before COVID, what mattered, right? And then kind of think about all of your experiences and look at what matters now after COVID. That's where you can see that employers are really dealing with a lot, okay? They're dealing with situations where people want to have more empowerment, more tools to help them succeed. I know with nurses a lot of times, because they're compassionate, they want to care, they just want to be better able to serve, right? In some of those instances where they have something that allows them to monitor their patients and really helps them. I have a lot of nurses in my family, so I know that the care that's provided there is amazing. But that's a tool, okay? And so that's what this is showing. And we're going to kind of take this kind of new kind of glance that we're kind of talking about and go into Rochelle and what she's going to be talking about and what's happening really at Salmon's Financial Group, which is just amazing transformation. I think and she's going to be talking about it, but just over time, how they've really changed.
I'm a little shorter than the other presenters. So good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. So my colleagues in the room know I don't love to talk about myself, but there's a few things about my bio that I thought might be interesting for the group to hear about. And the first thing is that I landed my dream job when I moved to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and came to work for Salmon's Financial Group. I didn't know it at the time, but I've had the good fortune to work for a company that has really embraced change and evolved with the changing business climates, the changing workforce environment. And if you can imagine, that's kind of led to a pretty challenging but rewarding HR career. Secondly, in the work that I do in leading our Total Rewards team, it's a constant process of understanding the changing internal and external environment and trying to keep pace with that change to make sure we're providing the Total Rewards, compensation programs, benefit programs that really help to attract and retain top talent. And yeah, that's tricky at times. But lastly, and most importantly, is I have the privilege of leading our Community Involvement Committee. And giving back to the community is core to our values at Salmon's Financial Group, and to be able to be a part of that is a privilege. We have a committee that makes up the group that makes decisions about how we give back to the community, but we engage our employees in this process by encouraging volunteer time off, but also we have a program we call the Community Impact Challenge, and that challenge gets our employees engaged in the work that we do within the community. Not only does it encourage volunteerism, but it gives them the empowerment to make decisions and to make those choices. It's a group of, we divide the office up into 4 groups, and it's an employee-led group. And those employees have the opportunity to investigate local charities, to understand what their needs are, to understand how they fit within our charter. And they propose back to the committee what we do with those charities in terms of investing the time, talent, and the treasures that we have within the company. And so that's a great way to empower our employees and also engage them in our culture at Salmon's Financial Group. Okay, so Salmon's Financial Group may not be as familiar with you as Avera and Citi, and so I thought I'd take a few minutes just to break down a little bit of who we are. And probably the most unknown fact about Salmon's is that we are part of a company based out of Dallas, Texas, Salmon's Enterprises, hence where the name Salmon's Financial Group comes from. And you can see from the slide that we not only compete really well in the markets in which we operate, but we have a global and diverse workforce, and our value of philanthropic giving comes from our parent company. So going a little further into who Salmon's Financial Group is, our history goes back to 1958, when Charles Salmons purchased a really tiny life insurance company in Leeds, South Dakota, named Dakota Mutual. They later moved the offices to Watertown, South Dakota, and eventually in the early 70s to Sioux Falls. And they built the building that you might recognize as the Gold Glass Cube in downtown Sioux Falls on 10th Street. We were in that office for a number of years until we built our office out on Solberg. So today, as you can see, we are much bigger than just a tiny office in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We're still primarily in the Midwest, but we've expanded from that, and we offer products beyond just life insurance. So one of the themes you'll hear me talk a lot about is how much culture matters, and how our culture has really helped us to be resilient and adapt to the changing business climate and workforce environment. We attribute our strong business growth and our strong talent retention and our extremely low turnover to the way that we continually work on our culture. We do this work, again, through employee-led committees, so we get our employees involved, and we do this culture-shaping work throughout the year. And I can tell you that because of our strong culture, it's the reason that we persevered through the challenges of the pandemic, the reason we were able to mobilize our workforce to a full work from home environment in just one business day. And it's also what gives us the fortitude to continue to respond to the challenges that we face today. And I can also tell you that 7.16% turnover is pretty unusual in any business sector, but especially in the financial services industry. You can see from the slide we've had some fairly significant head count growth since the pandemic. So despite the predictions of the Great Resignation, we have been able to persevere through that as well. And again, it goes back to culture. It goes back to the environment that we have that attracts and retains our talent. And I'm also proud to say that over a third of our workforce has been with the company for more than 10 years. So both in our culture work and in the work that we do in Total Rewards, it's focused on how do we make sure we're prepared for the workforce of the future, and how do we adapt to support those changing needs of the workforce. An example of this is hiring talent. Before COVID, we had about 35% of our workforce that was fully remote. Since COVID, we've seen that grow to almost 43%. Now, in our environment, not all positions can be full-time remote, and so we have to work with that challenge of those positions that can be remote. And one way we deal with that is through a hybrid workplace policy. We implemented our hybrid workplace policy as we returned employees to the office. We were one of the first employers to return our employees to the office in 2021. And the reason we were successful with that is because of our strong culture. The idea that our employees, are committed to the work that we do and that they trust the leadership that we have at Salmons. But we brought them back with a hybrid workplace policy that said, we understand that through COVID, we all realized the value of work-life balance, and we want to make sure you still have that as you return to the office. And did I mention culture shaping work is pretty important to who we are at Salmons? One way that we've been effective at adapting and engaging our workforce is through something we call listening strategies. It's really about asking for and listening to the feedback from our employees, and we do this through a lot of different approaches. But it's not enough just to ask for the feedback. We have to be transparent about the feedback, and we have to act on the feedback. And we can do a lot in a changing workforce or in changing environment when our employees know that they've been heard and that they can take part in that change. Okay, well, one of the other things that makes us unique and also builds into our culture is the fact that we are employee-owned. We are a privately held company, and our employees participate in an employee stock ownership plan. And this ownership mindset is also a powerful way to attract and retain talent. It's a pillar to who we are and how we work. And when you understand that your work matters, and that the work you do contributes to the value of the company, and that, oh, by the way, you're going to get a financial benefit out of that hard work and the things that you're doing to grow the company. And it probably helps that we've been really successful as an organization and that employees' account balances are looking pretty nice. So, but it also is something that comes with a lot of responsibility. And we talk a lot about how with great responsibility comes great power, and our employees take a lot of pride in that. In 2023, we focused on our people strategy, and we took a step towards making sure that our people strategy can sustain and react to the changing workforce. This was a body of work that was sponsored by our CEO, so it was from the top down. And what we did here is we said, as we think about our current talent and we think about the talent of the future, are we sure that this culture that we have is sustainable? And what could we do different to make sure that we can continue into the future, be resilient? And so we focused on our culture, imagine that, right? And we focused on our development of people, and then we also looked at benefits to make sure that we have benefits that are effective across a diverse and distributed workforce. And we've made some changes. As I said, we just started this work in the beginning of the year, but we've already made changes to our parental leave policy. We've enhanced our PTO benefit. We've introduced what's called developmental time off. And then we changed some things within our culture specific to our mission and redefined our purpose. So our new purpose is empowering futures and changing lives. And this doesn't just apply to our employees, it applies to how we expect our employees to treat our customers. We also introduced a new value. We've had 4 core values really since we became Salmon's Financial Group, and those core values have been integral in making sure that our employees understand our purpose. They can relate to our values. But we've realized through this work that if we're going to adapt to the changing needs of the workforce, we're going to work with a distributed workforce from hybrid to remote to in-office, we need to make sure people feel connected to their work, but also to one another. And so our new connection value was introduced just last week, and it's about uniting around our purpose, creating meaningful relationships, and sharing our time and talents. Those diverse time and talents, right, that we can learn from and share with each other. So I'll just, go back. So I'll wrap up just with a summary of kind of the 3 core things that has really helped us as an organization adapt to this ever-changing place that we live and we work. And the first one is culture matters. Employees need to understand it, they need to know the purpose of it, and they need to feel empowered within that culture. And then engaging our employees in giving us feedback. And as I mentioned, we build trust with our employees by not only asking for feedback, but involving them in that feedback and acting on those things. And then last is just navigating change isn't easy. We all know this, and it's a balance of business needs and employee needs. And you have to be transparent with your employees that there's a business need that we also have to balance too. But we also know one size doesn't fit all. And so just making sure that employees feel like they can take part in the change and they're empowered to take action in the change goes a long way to them buying in to the change.
Awesome. Yeah, culture does matter. I remember when I started out, everybody talked about employer branding. It was really that for the marketing. It was always about the values, and everything is just gonna kind of radiate from there. And now what we're seeing is really, it's called employee kind of branding, right? What your employees are seeing. And if you take care of your employees and you put them at the center of your universe, then they're gonna go out and they're gonna take care of your customers. They're gonna take care of your patients. And guess what? In the time when I think about what's going on in the financial services or in healthcare, that's what people really want, is they want that we are all in this together and there's kindness in this world. So with that, we're gonna be welcoming up Jamie Dooley, who is in charge of Citibank here, which is a wonderful thing. And he's gonna be talking about some things that are kind of very progressive as far as a very large organization that's looking at the workspace itself and what people want. So with that, let's welcome Jamie.
Well, thank you, Denise, and good morning, everyone. Almost afternoon, and I do see that I am the last speaker between you and lunch, so I realize that I have a tough situation ahead of me here. I'll try to be brief, and we'll get you guys out of here, hopefully on time. So again, thank you, Denise. And again, good morning. My name is Jamie Dooley. As Denise said, I am the site head for City Sioux Falls. And I'm going to start off with giving you a little bit of information around Citibank as a whole. So let's see here. There we go. Citibank as a whole, what I want you to be aware of is that we are a financial services company. We're in that industry. Many of you may be aware of Citibank from maybe a credit card that you have or that your parents utilize. Again, we're in that financial services industry. We have a number of personal, business, and private label cards that we offer. But in addition to that, we also offer retail banking. We offer investment, corporate, and commercial banking, as well as wealth and trust organizations as well. So what that means is we're really a full service financial institution, and we're working with 230,000 employees globally, which means we really want to stay connected not only within our site, but with all of our employees globally. Now, as far as the site itself, we do have, as this slide indicates, we do have an on-site retail bank. It's a full service. We're able to take deposits. We have a full service cafe, as well as a fitness center. And those are the types of amenities that we see that our employees really appreciate at the end of the day. On our next slide, let's see here. There we go. As far as the site itself that we have here in Sioux Falls, we actually moved our site about 4 years ago, back in 2019. We moved from the north side of Sioux Falls into our current location that we have, which is at the intersection of Interstate 229 and 29. That site has roughly 1,300 employees, and those employees support 20 different businesses within city. So we have really a range of different positions that we have, different supporting functions and different jobs to offer. And however, when you think about city, the old model, some of our old positions that we used to offer, were really more customer service or call center based. We really have kind of what I would say is evolved away from that. While we still offer a number of consumer supporting positions, a lot of our positions are now in the credit operations, the fraud policy, legal, the core ops types of positions, more professional based positions. So again, that's just one of the ways that we've changed over the past 10 to 20 years. So when we built our new site, one of the things that we did is we said we need to build for the future. And what that future looked like is, instead of having everyone have a specific desk, we have neighborhoods. So each employee is actually designated to a neighborhood, which actually we have some slides of here in just a bit. But each person is assigned to a specific neighborhood. Those neighborhoods are really specific to the business that they're supporting, so it actually promotes collaboration. It actually is a really good way for peers to understand what their colleagues are working on, and then be able to go in and still complete their responsible tasks. I'll also say that within our Sioux Falls site, we have flex seating. Each employee has either a laptop that they're assigned. Each of our seating solutions have the ability to either have a virtual desktop solution or be able to have like a docking station for those laptops. Each station has dual monitors, a keyboard, a mouse, as well as a wireless headset, and a video camera. Now, those video cameras have been, in the last 4 years, they have increased their usage, I'd say probably 200%. Prior to COVID, we would see the occasional video conference being scheduled. Now, the majority of our meetings are video conference calls. And really, it's to engage those people who are remote within the city itself, or whether it is individuals across the globe. We are continuing to engage those individuals. When we look at how our work models are structured within Sioux Falls, we have 3 different models. We have a hybrid model. That model is where we're asking employees to come in at least 3 days a week onto the site. We have what we call our home office program, which is full-time remote, so 5 days a week they're working from home. And we also have our site-dependent employees. Now, most of our employees are actually in that hybrid model. Approximately 60 to 65% of our employees are hybrid. Roughly 30% of our employees are full-time work from home or home office program employees, and the rest are those site dependents. In order to be able to support that, like I said, we do have that flexible seating options within our site. We also have assigned lockers, so every employee has an assigned locker because, again, if you don't have a desk, where are you going to put those personal items? The lockers allow employees to be able to store their personal items at the site so they're not taking it back and forth. We also have some pretty unique workspaces as well. While we certainly have our traditional meeting rooms, we also have a work cafes on every floor. Work cafes allow employees to go eat, and they're also able to connect in to our, what I would say is our technology. You can actually see a live oak table in our work cafe. We actually have one in each cafe where employees are able to plug in their laptops and be able to actually work remotely in the cafes. They can hold meetings, do whatever they need to do, but it's actually just a different way to connect. We also have collaboration lounges. Again, I think I mentioned that we have the traditional meeting rooms with all the camera technologies that will follow you around the room, as well as microphones within those rooms, so you can make sure that you're hearing the speakers. But in addition to that, we have these sort of non-traditional collaboration lounges that allow any on-site teams to meet and be able to have those meetings in a little bit more of an untraditional way. So one of the things that I wanted to indicate is that one of the reasons that we have to make sure that our sites have those types of amenities is because what we see is that we're not only competing with other financial services within the city of Sioux Falls, but we're actually I'll say the site itself, we're actually competing with people's living room couches, right, or their dining room tables. We're wanting to pull those individuals into the site and have great, vibrant, collaborative, and wonderful working spaces for them to come into to be able to complete their positions. And we feel that this type of an environment is a prime environment to be able to draw those people in. So again, that's just a little bit about City. I think that's about my time. So Denise, I'll turn it back over to you.
So, we are going to stay on time because we are like right up towards lunch. I just want to thank our panelists. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you, Jamie. For everybody that's in this room, and I'm going to ask all of the high schoolers, think about where you want to be, okay? And I know that's kind of sometimes a little bit, I know sometimes it's a little bit far, but hopefully you can start seeing yourself, and envisioning a life here, a life where you're working in one of these wonderful companies, but also with these types of amenities. And I would also say the type of commitment that they have to employees, because that's really why you're seeing all these changes, is really the commitment. So again, thank you to our panel. Okay. And so with this, lunch is going to be served back in the exhibit hall. I'm going to ask that you guys, because we have a lot of people in this room, let's just kind of exit a little bit, safety first, but thank you.
Test. Test 1, 2.
do we deliver best-in-class products today while keeping an eye on the horizon of Earth industries? By using everything at our disposal. Because at Viaflex, creating innovative solutions to complex customer challenges is why we exist. Viaflex, protecting Earth, promoting industry.
Home. It's more than an address. It's where you step out and snuggle in, or you share and dream and do. So you shouldn't have to go far from home when you need care. Whether it's for something common or complicated, we believe you deserve world-class healthcare, no matter where in the world you live, because every patient, everywhere, means the world to us. Here for all, here for good. Sanford Health.
Since 1956, Aerostar has been challenging the limits of technology.
Aerostar is an aerospace and defense contractor that works on high-altitude stratospheric balloons, radar systems, and protective wear. And our mission is to connect, protect, and save lives.
Today, Aerostar is a diversified technology company that continues to be a world leader in the design, development, and manufacturing of aerospace products. For decades, Aerostar has been at the forefront of high-altitude research and has a distinguished history of collaborating with university, scientific, and military partners.
Back in 1956, there was a lot of new technology being developed. There was a lot of testing for pre-NASA space race scientific research. Some of the first work that they were doing with the high-altitude balloons was before they had put people up in rockets.
For years, Aerostar has collaborated with NASA to use high-altitude research balloons in Antarctica. Felix Baumgartner was carried by an Aerostar balloon to the stratosphere, from which he completed his record-shattering space dive. Aerostar has spent decades refining high-altitude balloon technology, designing, engineering, and manufacturing the end product. It is a technology that can get balloons to the stratosphere reliably, inexpensively, and from anywhere in the world.
A satellite is reasonably expensive to put into space, and it doesn't just happen quickly. The balloon is orders of magnitude cheaper than that. What a balloon can do is it can navigate to a certain point that you can specify, and it can linger there for weeks or months on command. I can put it where I want it or in the vicinity of where I want it for a long period of time, reasonably inexpensively and with short notice.
The possibilities only grow as Aerostar develops smaller hardware and smarter technology.
We say not even the sky is the limit. If you take what we know about flying in the stratosphere that we didn't used to know, add into that better battery technology, better solar technology, better computing and navigation smarts, I think there's a lot that can be done that hasn't been done before.
Finding a place to belong is everything. It's where you can make a difference, where you're heard, where you have a team that supports you, and the benefits you deserve. At Avera, you can find that place. You belong at Avera. Apply today. Avera.org/careers.
Oh, hi there. We are Daktronics. We create some of the most sophisticated and iconic scoring and audiovisual systems on the planet that ensure your projects deliver impact. We're a passionate group of designers, fabricators, project managers, sales, service, digital artists, tech gurus, and engineers. We design, code, test, fabricate, bend, punch, insert, paint, pack, ship, install, and service dynamic audiovisual systems. Oh, and we also create the incredible content that goes on them. We do everything, but most importantly, we listen to our customers and together find successful solutions for their brand and messages to deliver impact. From the small projects to the large, that's what we do. We innovate, we design, and we light it up. We are Daktronics.
At Premier, it's about doing what's right for our customers, employees, and communities, giving our time and resources to support what matters most: academics and athletics, arts and entertainment, families and economic development. When you have the right people, financial solutions, and a spirit of service, you build one of the nation's strongest financial organizations. First Premier Bank and Premier Bank Card. Investing in you. Member FDIC.
Today we are in Hartford, South Dakota, extending our services to the community here to bring high-speed internet to them. Some of the work they've been doing today is a little hard, a little difficult. Drilling, hooking up to interduct, pulling it back, setting vaults, pulling fiber. Terrain's a little rocky out here, but they got plenty of guys out here to get the job done.
As a Hartford representative, it's very important for our residents to have a good quality of life. Part of that quality of life is having high-speed internet.
When you think about a state like South Dakota that's very dependent upon agriculture, it's essential that we have great connectivity into these rural markets.
The combines, the different equipment is using software, and so broadband is very needed in those areas.
Our customers rely on our products and services for so many things: education, work, healthcare, and even play.
Our employees live all across the footprint, and we're involved with everything in day-to-day operations, but really outside in community involvement.
We do have another entity too, Midco Sports, where we come out and we broadcast local high school, college games. I'm invested, I live here, and I want to be able to provide services to the community.
I love working with the Midco team. They have been nothing but fabulous individuals in our community. They have volunteered for different opportunities, so we really are grateful that they have partnered with us in our community.
You know, I'm really proud of the projects that we do to bring rural broadband to these communities, because I see it as an enabler for them to continue to grow and thrive for years to come.
We're dedicated, we're experienced, and we're local. So we're not going anywhere.
We've been a part of rural North Dakota and rural South Dakota for nearly 100 years, and we're going to be here for the next 100.
So welcome. My name is Denise Gazetta. I'm the Vice President of Talent and Workforce for the Sioux Falls Development Foundation. Today's session is Building Your Cyber Arsenal. It is something that's near and dear to my heart, and hopefully everybody in this room kind of I think is looking forward to not only the advice and the tips, but also the fact that we have so much that we do on our devices themselves. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just a couple housekeeping tips. We've had a lot of people that want to know about their SHRM credit. Yes, I will be sending out emails to everyone tomorrow. For today's event, you will earn 10 professional development credits. So the other thing is, this is a moderated panel discussion we're going to have, and this is a live recorded session as well. So as you read this, I mean, this topic is near and dear to everybody's hearts. We live on our devices. We have all of our data that's now in the cloud or between the cloud and different sites, right? But it's something that as we continue to see our businesses and our communities just transform by technology. There's some mindfulness that comes along with that too, and we're going to be talking about that today. Okay, so just for those that are in SHRM, just knowing that this is kind of the segment on technology. So for those credits, in case you have to enter that, it also, if you belong to other human resource organizations, sometimes they do offer, or they do ask for this subsection and topic. So it is my pleasure to introduce two people today that are just doing really tremendous work inside of our community. Jim, would you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience and who you work for and your role?
Sure. Jim Hansen. I'm the VP of Information Security for Avera Health. I've been with Avera now for about 8 years in that role.
Thank you. Katie?
I'm Katie Shuck. I am the lead cyber intelligence analyst within the South Dakota Fusion Center, which is a part of the Department of Public Safety here for the state, and have been in this role for about 3 years. Previously, the military, organizations.
Awesome. So, common cyber attacks, things that all of our businesses are dealing with, right? And this was a little bit shocking when I looked at some of the research and the statistics. Ransom attacks have been on the rise. So anybody here get a little note from your HR or maybe your technology team telling you that you were part of a phishing scam? Okay, nobody wants to. Very popular, very common, a lot of cost there. In fact, during the last year alone, we've seen a rise of 171% of those types of attacks. So they're occurring very commonly, very frequently, and really kind of challenging our businesses. If we look at data breaches and we look at sort of the loss of our personal and our professional information, you know, everything out there is now available. Even when my children were born, one of the things that I noted is that they have a social security number from birth, right? Which is something that's a little bit different for some of us. I didn't get my social security number until I was about 15 years of age. So just a lot of information, and the way that that information could impact with it's stolen or into the wrong hands really is quite a concern. The average time to identify a breach, now this was kind of interesting, was 207 days. Okay, so often they go a little bit undetected, but we're going to be talking about that. And then the life cycle was just about the same. So your data is breached, and then you have all these things that are occurring within that year. So a lot of information there. We're going to look at sort of the approach that we're taking and why this is important. Cyber crimes is really something that we're all kind of used to. And I want to read some information that came from the World Forum. And it talks about how the major threat to our continued health and profitability of our businesses, which we know, right? But then they also put a cost to it, okay? $10.5 trillion, and by 2025, that is what cyber crimes, these common things that we're now seeing, is going to cost all of us, okay? That is more than tripled. If you look at sort of the previous 5 years before, about 3 trillion. So you're definitely seeing where they're happening more frequently and they're impacting us as far as financially. The other thing is that most businesses kind of stumble into protecting their data a little differently. If I go back and I look at when I was in the bank, so a little bit about me, I started in a government agency, then went and worked at a bank. At the time when we would travel, we would have to take with us a secure data card that would allow us to access our email and our information. Nowadays, we're walking around, we're using the internet, we're going in and out, data roaming, so all of that information is out there, okay? So very, very different kind of climate and just different philosophy. And that's why if you look at sort of the impact, and we're going to be talking about this today in terms of what can we do on an individual level, what can we do on a departmental level, what can we do on an organizational level, and then what can we do on a community level. Because it's going to take a lot of us to kind of get together and say, okay, we now know sort of what and how this can impact us, because one of the things I feared most when my kids were born and they had their social security numbers basically given to them is what would happen to them and their livelihood in the future if they were ever a victim of a cybercrime, okay? So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna start getting into our moderated Q&A, okay? So I'm gonna ask our Jim and Katie this question here. Jim, tell us what a day in your life looks like, right? Because you have, and I learned this earlier, 300 plus locations, about 20,000 employees, okay? So not a small feat, right? And everybody walks around with a device. And yet, the confidential information that is stored within, you know, your data, all of your tests, all of your labs, all of that. So can you kind of walk us through what a day in your life looks like?
Sure. I don't know that there's a typical day, but I'll just start with today. kind of how things played out. As you indicated, we have over 20,000 employees. Part of it from our perspective too, our IT staff is about 340 individuals. Within the security organization, we have about 24, 25 individuals in our security group. So a typical day, but this morning we had an all-hands meeting that was for the IT group, walked through that. And I'll just share with you what I shared with that group. We have multiple pillars, security being one, which I own, enterprise applications, technology. But the items I talked about this morning, we had a executive tabletop exercise last Friday. We do these once a year. We pull in individuals from CEO to marketing to legal. We had general counsel on that, and we walk through a ransomware scenario. This is a firm we use out of New York that works with us through that. So we do a day one, day two. Typically takes us about 4 hours to get through that, and then how we would communicate what we're encountering, the malicious actors reaching out to us with either demands, how would we respond to those, how do we communicate out to our staff, to our facilities we support. So we did that. It took us about 3 hours on Friday. The nice part about it was, and I told our marketing director that I was hypothetically in Hawaii when this happened. So next year, to make it more real, I want them to ship me to Hawaii. So I think that would be good from my perspective anyway. But we did walk through that, and it's very useful because we look at our processes, what works, how we would handle things. Specifically too, how do we communicate that out? How do you let the general public know? You don't want to release information too much when you don't have a lot of information. A lot of you probably know that there's a lot of investigation going on behind the scenes with those type things going, okay, what are we encountering? What are we seeing? Can we see what's happening? And then malicious actors reaching out to wanting information, wanting us to take a certain path. Those have shifted a bit over the last probably few months. I know with what we saw happening with, if you saw with MGM, with Caesars here recently, with some of those threats, we're seeing information there. They're now reaching out directly to individuals. So it might be to a CEO saying, we know where your family lives. So there are individual threats associated with that, starting to happen with that now as well. So it's very complex, and that's why we do these exercises and go through that. So that's one of the things I shared with our IT group this morning. There were 3 other items I talked to as well. Our Identity and Access Management Program. Some of you may be involved with that. You may not think of that as security, but access and how individuals get access is very critical. I have that under my pillar, have responsibility for that. So we're always looking at that going, whether it's multi-factor. Again, everybody has devices. We have remote work now, which has changed over the last several years. So how can I encounter or know that whoever's signing in is who they say they are? So we have been building products around that as well. Phishing is another one. In fact, we sent out monthly phishing exercises. We had one go out this morning. Kind of the latest play is QR codes, and maybe some of you are seeing those going. Some of those circle back around. Now with AI as part of those, they're getting more sophisticated. They're harder to identify, harder to see, or harder to recognize, put it that way. But we do those monthly. We push those out to individuals. I think right now we have a situation where if you fail 3 times over 6 months, you go to remedial training to go, okay, we're going to train you more. You're clicking on too many items. So that is a big part for us. Phishing, especially they call it whale phishing, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, but focusing on senior leaders, going, okay, we're going to focus on senior leaders, and if we can get their credentials, that'll give us greater access in. So that was another component. And then some of the tools we used, and another item I talked to this morning was just our identity protection. So there are tools out there now that will assist for identifying, I'll say, looking for patterns of identity use. Going, we had one here a couple days ago going, somebody trying to sign in, and they signed in within 2 minutes from Texas and then from Idaho, going, okay, you're not moving that quickly between those 2 locations. So we call that out. We'll reset passwords, do things like that as well. So those are kind of one items. Then another item I had this morning I have a cyber task force that is made up of it'd be CEO, CFO, general counsel, or CIO, but we have a product we're looking at that a few doctors want to use that is built around AI. Going, well, we haven't done a security review of that yet. So discussion with that group was to go, we're going to shut off access till we have our security review completed, that we can go through and say, okay, this is secure, it's ready for use. And brought that forward to them with that recommendation, wanting them to be aware of it, to ensure they're in agreement with that, which they were. So we'll be shutting down some of that access temporarily. So there are a number of things that happen in a day, and then here I am now. So that's so far for the day. I did get a couple of emails too, one from a friend going, my wife got this email, it looks like a fish. Jim, is it a fish? Going, okay, well, let me check with a few people, and turns out it was not a phishing email. Somebody out of Aberdeen that had reached out. So you get odds and ends like that as well through the day, just kind of left field that you're dealing with at any point in time.
Absolutely. And that's, so I do want to report, since this is a live recorded session, I'm not on the naughty list for any of the sort of training violations, because I do take the training very seriously. But getting to Katie, what does a day in your life look like? Because Jim is working in an organization and protecting and partnering. Katie's role is a little bit different because she's looking at, our community-wide and also statewide.
Yeah, and I will add, though, really quickly, the federal government did just recently come out with a term for the QR code phishing. So if anybody is interested, it's now called quishing, Quishing. You can take that term and make it into a Jeopardy question. My role is very different than Jim's, because I am not sitting in a security operations center, SOC, watching logs, watching alerts that are coming up. I am working with our critical infrastructure partners as well as law enforcement here in the state and across the country. So I'm a part of what's called a fusion center, and there are 80 fusion centers across the country working on identifying any major attack that could impact national security here in the country. And cyber is one of the top threats that we face with that. So I work with every other state, from federal all the way down to local law enforcement and partners, in order to identify what threats they're having. We focus a lot on business email compromise, a lot on ransomware attacks, trying to find the indicators, but most of my job is figuring out what could happen. So I'm constantly looking at, I spend a lot of time on the dark web, a lot of time on alternate social media channels where hackers like to live and communicate. I spend way too much time translating things from Russian, although lately that's kind of changed over, and I'm having to use some tools to translate from other languages too. But I'm sitting there trying to see, what are these hackers doing? What threats are they talking about? What vulnerabilities? What are they targeting? What could happen? Because I want to look at, if something even small happens here in the state, what is the cascading impact that it has on other organizations and people, citizens here, citizens that are traveling through our state, and into neighboring states and across the country too. So always looking at that national security perspective, making sure our ERs can stay open, our law enforcement can still work and investigate crimes as they're happening, that our agriculture can go out and complete harvest and get their harvest to the grain silos and onto markets and everything, to make sure our economy keeps rolling as well. So I look at national security threats from a cyber perspective and really a public safety perspective here.
It's interesting, because one of the things as we were preparing, I learned about all the coordination that's going on. So normally when I'm doing a panel, I have to introduce people. You guys already knew each other, right? And they already work in tandem. And not only they work in tandem together, but they're also working across complete sectors from healthcare to banking. So that's really kind of why it's a huge, I think, endeavor. I want to kind of turn things a little bit and kind of talk about the talent landscape. And as we do this, and sorry, I'm going to kind of look at this for a second. I'm going to put some data up for you guys. So during lunch, most of you met our Career Connection students, you also saw a video of one of our Build Dakota scholars. But one of our students did a tour earlier this month to Dakota State University and absolutely fell in love with it, fell in love with the students, said, this is where I want to be, applied, and got accepted, okay? So when we look about the opportunities to get more people, especially more women, because women, if you look at sort of our landscape right now, we have about an even population, right, between women and men, prime age working. But as we see in the future, one of the forecasts is that women are going to be more, or they're going to have a greater percentage of working or greater percentage of the population, which is why this question, long way, but why this question, how do we get more kids, more women, but more kids involved in cybersecurity?
That's a great question. And I think it's an evolving question too. So I think the last statistic that I saw, and it's been probably a year since I've seen a statistic, was there are 23% women in cybersecurity. I do work with, up at DSU, the CyPro program up there, and they're doing great work in trying to recruit middle school girls, get them interested in technology, in STEM, in IT, and cybersecurity, all fields. The problem that we really have now is the field of cybersecurity is expanding so greatly. I mean, you don't just have the people who are the IT, who know how to code, who know how to do all of the technical stuff. We now need the people who can also teach it, build awareness, who understand how to talk about it to the decision makers, the people who are impacting policy. We need people who can establish cyber law. And really, it's become so vast that as the amount of women continue to increase going into cybersecurity, the amount of people needed in cybersecurity is still just immensely growing as well. So I think it's just a constant state of understanding what cybersecurity really is. You don't have to code to know how to work in cybersecurity. It helps at times. But now we've got AI that can assist you with that. We've got other people who can do that. And if they can do it well, I learned how to code in school. I am not the person you want coding anything today. It would be the absolute worst program you've ever seen. So having those people who really know how to do that is great, but we need people who can support them and do the other work in cybersecurity too. So it's understanding that it's not all the hackers in hoodies or people sitting at a computer all day long. I mean, Jim and I are both out here in public today. They let us out of our offices and away from our computers. So you get to do cool stuff like that too in cybersecurity.
Which is really great, because one of the things I always hear when people kind of quiz me about my own background is they talk about black ops and they talk about all of these things where you are sort of in the covert world. There's so many things that are really, that can meet your needs, whether you're a lawyer, right? You're talking about the ethical and legal implications of cyber. And we've had some recent, if you think about some of the events that have occurred in the last 5 years, right? Where people's phones, you had to have law enforcement have access to phones and the privacy rights. And then I think, another thing is, we think about this landscape, not everybody's going to want to work for an IT company, right? But it's interesting because, Jim, one of the things somebody said to me earlier in one of the sessions was, well, gosh, I just thought that hospitals were all nurses and doctors. And I said, well, stick around. You're going to hear about some IT, some marketing, some other careers. So I want to turn to now, because we've talked about sort of more women and getting more involvement. And the really reason why that's important, again, is because we are seeing sort of our labor kind of shift a little bit. And we do see that cyber-related jobs is so huge, not only in our economy locally, but also nationally. And these jobs they're well-paying jobs. I mean, the average IT/cyber is going to make well into, $60,000 plus is what the average earner is. I want to turn a little bit now to some of the recommendations for how we can sort of look at, because a lot of us in the room, we've been in roles where we're not necessarily dealing with vendor selection, right? We could use, especially in something that's changing. Could you guys just kind of walk us through some of the list? And I'm going to put this up here. But walk through your own recommendations for when businesses are selecting. Maybe they're hiring a team internally like Jim has, or maybe they're outsourcing. We outsource, okay, because we're a small nonprofit. But what does that look like? What should the people in the audience kind of look for? And what would be your recommendations?
I could talk to that a little in regards to, and we do have a mix from, as I mentioned, the security staff we have in place. There are certain things, though, that we do. We have an annual retainer with a forensics firm that if we did have some type of breach, we would bring in that forensics firm to assist us. From a risk assessment perspective, too, we probably have over 350 third-party vendors we work with, different technology companies we work with, that we do reviews on those. We will lean on some external parties to assist with that as well as we're looking at it. So my staff has, and I think Katie is right in going, there are a lot of, we have to define what cybersecurity is. There are a lot of different roles within that. It is not just sitting behind a computer. We have risk analysis work we do as we look at it to go, okay, let's look at a third-party vendor we're using. What is the risk with that vendor? How do we identify that and score that risk? So we can make a determination of, okay, is that a vendor we want to partner with or not? So there are a number of things like that. Process-wise, I'm not a policy wonk. I do own security policies going, we go through those on an annual basis going, what policies do we have to have in place? Things like that. So we do have a mix staff-wise in regards to where people focus and what their specialties are within those different areas. So it is a broad mix with our staff in regards to kind of what we have them working on and then where we have to reach out and supplement. There are times just depending upon workload going, okay, workload-wise, we cannot get everything done. It is critical from maybe from a patient care perspective, things like that, that we need to reach out and get assistance from other organizations that can help in these areas.
And, when we're looking at, vendors, people, anything that we're trying to outsource or to hire within too, we're looking at a lot of it because it is government and the work that I do is very sensitive. So the integrity of that vendor, the integrity of the person coming in, we spend a lot of time researching, doing a background on the organization in order to make sure that the data that they're sharing is done in a legal manner, but also an ethical manner too, especially from a government law enforcement standpoint. We want to make sure that we're protecting everybody's rights as we're out there investigating, and that comes with the tools that we're using. And a lot of the tools that I use are the same tools that are commercially available to private organizations like Avera or other companies, but I have to look at how they're used and how they're conducting their own business in a different light. So making sure that integrity is there is number one. And as we're looking at people too, integrity of a person, if you're dealing with sensitive information, sensitive investigations, whether that is cyber or it's another type of law enforcement investigation, I mean, that is definitely the number one thing we're looking at out there. So we spend a lot of time researching in order to make sure that things are on the up and up as we're going to conduct our business.
I'm going to add something there too in regards to, and Katie made me think of this, but even with the third parties we work with, in the research we go through, we can control what we can control within our environment at Avera. Though with over 350 vendors we're using going, we have to understand their security environment going, do they have the right protocols in place? Where are they storing data? We look at things like going, okay, especially with cloud applications, and we're seeing more and more SaaS applications, software as a service, where you go in and go, okay, our data center is over in Europe. Well, all of a sudden that starts introducing European regulations that going, okay, we want to avoid that. So we want to keep our data in the US. So there are things like that that we look at as we're working with vendors to go through and again, making sure their security is up to snuff.
It's definitely evolving. I think about just a little bit of my own work history when dealing with, so I was in the federal government, and then I went and actually in banking worked with a lot of governments, both the U.S. government as well as other national governments. And it was always one of the challenging things with what their requirements and what we would be exposed to. That's one of the things I think we kind of a little bit take for granted. but we're moving into more of a regulated environment because of technology. And you would think almost the opposite, but it's not. It is really, and it reminds me of the days where banking was highly regulated in everything that we were doing. So just final thoughts, because I know we have a lot of different suggestions that are listed on the screen. We will make copies of all of this available. There's certain certifications that you should look at. You should look at training and development and how much time that's really kind of worked. Would you like to kind of talk a little bit about your own training and your own staff? Because you talked about sort of your own exercises, but it's pretty extensive.
Yeah, we do a fair amount. In fact, we had a couple of individuals out at Hack and Fest. I think that was about a week or so ago. But had a couple of individuals out there. With our primary vendors too, we will participate with them or go to some of the events they sponsor to educate. There is within the group too, I have a couple individuals going, their lunchtime they spend listening to security podcasts to go, okay, that's one way to keep up to speed as well. So there's a lot of information available. So some of it's self-learning, but we do provide internal training and then training with some of our partners as well. We take advantage of that as much as we can. It is changing, as you all know, but it changes rapidly as well. Some of the products, it seems like the life cycle anymore for some of our security products, you might be in that 3-4 year range before another company, leapfrogs them and saying, okay, we have something new that does something better. So we have to continually look at that. And then a lot of consolidation as well in the security industry. We're seeing that happening at a very rapid pace to go, whether it's the Cisco's, the Palos, IBM's, Microsoft's going, they're purchasing security companies and wrapping those into their organizations. So it does keep us on our toes and making sure we have our staff trained, they are trained to meet that demand is very important.
Our training is definitely a little bit different. We do attend conferences, everything to stay up to date, but when you're looking at what could happen, a lot of it is just making sure you're getting together with the networks that are also looking at what could happen. So we can go to conferences and see what people are seeing right now, but when you're trying to imagine what could happen in the future, it's getting those right connections to people who are also thinking that way. We have some great programs here in the state where people can talk about that with our Cybersecurity Council of South Dakota. We have our South Dakota InfraGuard, which is run through the FBI. We have Women in Cybersecurity. All of those organizations get together on a fairly regular basis and can talk about the threats that they're seeing as well as what they think could happen. Within that, I know lately artificial intelligence has been a huge thing. Generative AI is here. We know that it has some great stuff and it's really exciting for a lot of people. I'm looking at how you can use it in a bad way. What are hackers already doing and how can they evolve that? I mean, how can I can go out there and spoof somebody's voice in about 5 minutes and then do a lot of really bad stuff with that. Please don't ever, this is not you don't have a get out of jail card for me for that, if for any students or anything in here. But it's a very scary world sometimes of this technology is coming out so quickly, and how do we train our employees, everybody else here in the state who's working within our Bureau of Information and Telecommunications, our law enforcement as they're investigating crime that's happening. And so that's a big part of what I do, is making sure we're staying on top of that. I do a lot of writing intelligence products to get that out there and let people know what could happen.
So as we're, and we'll take some questions from the audience if we have time, because some people are, I can see my phone buzzing over there, but kind of talk to us about sort of how, I won't ask you for your recommendations on a personal level of what to do, but I will ask you, so what kind of routines do you guys follow yourselves to keep your own information safe? Because the stuff that you're seeing, I would think would be life-changing behaviors, right, for most of us. I said to a colleague the other day, never, ever have your Bluetooth on 100% of the time. And they thought I was just out of this world, right, that I was actually speaking in Chinese. But let me just ask you guys that as kind of a final question. What kind of behaviors and what kind of things do you work through to keep your own data protected and safe?
You know, for me, I definitely practice a policy of least privilege and everything with my own. So I don't give myself, and in the state, I actually have had to tell our state IT not to give me certain access levels to things because I'll probably abuse it, or somebody else could come in if I'm being targeted. Personally, I know I've heard a lot of people within my profession, they limit their impact on or their outreach on social media. I don't believe in that. It's a personal thing for me because I can go out there, and I do this with a lot of investigations. People say, well, I'm not on social media, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Instagram or Snapchat. I can still find you on there. It's a little bit scary. And so I tell people, it's like if your business is on there, if your company is on there, if your community is on there, and you're part of any organization, if you played sports, you're on there. I have young kids who are now getting to where their name is getting out with the sports that they play, and while they don't have social media accounts, because I've scared them on those, their names are already on there. So I limit the amount of data that I put on there about myself. I post after the fact, and I am constantly monitoring where my name is popping up online everywhere. I have alerts set up like crazy so I can see when my name pops up online. And I will say for my kids, I never mention my kids' names on social media because I want them to be able to pass a background check if they choose to have some sort of clear job in the future. So my names, we use acronyms when I describe my kids online. And I limit the amount of posts and front facial recognition possibility with them because facial recognition on social media is a very, very real thing. So, and it will impact the ability of younger generations to get clear jobs if you want to work in the military or do anything covert in the future.
I should have been taking notes on that. I don't do near that, but I did have LinkedIn account for a number of years. I deleted that, going, okay, I don't want to be on LinkedIn. So I try to minimize what I have out there. Things I'm sure the rest of you do. If I get a call, don't know the number, it's not in my directory, it goes to voicemail. I don't answer. Don't answer anything like that. Text messages too, similar to that. If I don't know it, if I'm not expecting it, I don't answer that. Even if it is something I'm expecting, I don't respond back through my text message. I go to the site online and access it that way. Sure, a number of you all do that too, with banking alerts, things like that. I set multi-factor up on anything and everything I can to make that. My mom lives in Florida. She just had the famous call last week that her grandson was in jail. Was not, so luckily she caught that, but she's 85 now going, okay, would I be alert enough at 85 to be able to catch that? And you go, I could see people falling for that. So it's just those type of things to go. You just have to continually educate yourself. And as Katie said too, just stay up to speed in regards to what's happening in the environment and monitoring that at all times.
Absolutely good advice, I think, to all of us on a personal level, also the parents. I too don't put my kids out there on social media. I haven't gone to the level of giving them acronyms, though. That may come, but no, it's really good advice. So I'm going to go ahead, and we have about 5 minutes. If there's any questions from the audience, just kind of raise your hand, and what I can do is come to you, and I'm going to screen the question for our panel. Okay.
Wondering how both your organizations manage to balance the opportunities around AI or all of the innovation with the risks and the threats. That's something that our organization is working through right now. Like, what does that task force look like to make sure we don't fall behind, but still securing our information?
I can talk a little bit too in regards to what we're doing from an AI perspective, that we do have a group looking at that. I would say we're trying to keep up with that right now at this point, identify what's out there. There are packages out there that individuals can sign up for. So awareness is one key for us to make sure that that's being brought to us from awareness perspective so we can evaluate it and make sure from a risk perspective it's protecting the data. It's becoming not more difficult, but I think it'll become more of a challenge as you start seeing Microsoft with Copilot being introduced. Every product, every vendor we're talking to is saying we're introducing AI. I don't know that there are some new components to that, but it's always been a component of a number of these products. They're just advancing it now with kind of the large language models that they can take it a step further. But it is challenging, and we do have a group that looks at that. And there again, just to make sure, as you indicated, to make sure we're keeping the data secure going forward. But awareness is a lot of it for my group, going that we're aware of it, that it's happening, and monitoring that too. We can, through our firewalls, we can kind of see some of that activity. We monitor for that activity. If we're seeing something that we're not aware of, then reaching out to individuals going, how are you using, what is this tool, and then bringing that back in to evaluate it.
Within mine, I've worked for state government, so we have policies for everything. So we're actually in a policy building phase right now, looking at how we would use acceptable use of generative AI. A lot of that, though, beyond that goes into right now we're doing a lot of education on the pitfalls of AI, knowing that it's only as good as the language models it's built on. And some of those are very different depending on which, if you're using BARD, if you're using ChatGPT, what version of ChatGPT, if you're using any of the others. There's a lot of them out there available. And so we're talking about a lot about what the pitfalls are, that you have to have somebody who, you can't just trust AI is going to be correct if you're using it to create a report or something, because it will. I actually used it to create an introduction over, and I asked it gave it my name and said, who am I? Write an introduction in there, and over 75% of the information was false. Now, I have a very large presence online, so I was surprised at how false it was, but there are also other people with my name out there. And the same goes for any use of AI if you're asking those questions. It's limited. It can't tell the difference between what's true and what's false out there.
Time for one more question. But I do think that's interesting, because one of the things I know with working with a lot of the schools is that they're worried about sort of the genuine authenticity of what's being done by a lot of their students with all of these tools, right? Because they have these tools that can basically write papers. I tell my own kids they can't write as well as you, okay?
I will add just quickly too, so AI is actually only built to be grammatically correct. It's not meant to be true. So you can't actually ask AI to be true, only that what's written will be grammatically correct. That's the whole foundation of the algorithm that creates it.
Hello, my name is Gisma Ali. I run a nonprofit organization here. My question is, what programs do you guys have in place to reach out and bring awareness to the immigrant in the minority community, especially with IT and cybersecurity? There's such a huge need, and just trying to get the kids in those communities to be engaged and see that in their future, and some of the parents as well. Do you guys have anything in place to reach out to those community to be able to have access to those resources?
So at DSU, and just because I do volunteer work with them, the CyPer program actually does reach out to many of those communities. Right now, I know they have a big push going on to the reservations here and tribal land, to the tribal schools, and trying to educate there. But when I was really active with them and actually employed through the university, we did go into we targeted some of the schools that had higher immigration populations, and that those migrant kids, to be able to let them know what was possible. Where if they speak other languages, we didn't always have those capabilities, so we rely a lot on the schools and providing resources to the schools for that, and through law enforcement.
And from our perspective too, we do have a lot of interaction with DSU, with Dakota State, and work with them to assist in that area. So we really like DSU. They do a great job, and that's been very helpful from our perspective too, to make that outreach.
Yeah, and so from the Sioux Falls Development Foundation perspective, our Your Future STEM, which is for middle schools, really works with all of our middle schools, but we go in and we work inside with project-based learning. So we are getting that exposure early, and then we're linking that to what they're learning in their classrooms, and then linking that to a job. And then that continues, because then we go into the high schools and we work with all of the high schools through our career connections, where we're looking at those kids that may be at risk, okay? They're smart, they graduate on time, they're good kids, right? But there are barriers. And so how do we then bring them to a DSU or to an Avera, which I think once you get into what I've heard, Jim, and correct me if I'm wrong, but once you get into Avera, they have a whole team of people that can develop your talent, right? And they're wonderful. And so that's the kind of thing when we talk about the fact that we're trying to make a dent with about 30% of our kids that graduate on time, but go into workforce, not into a meaningful job, but just any job, okay? And then they don't go into any type of higher ed. How do we change that? So it's going to take a lot, but those two programs, and we did have the success with DSU where we brought our talent draft day. We had to change that date and move it to the spring because we actually had too many kids that were going to be on a campus, and so we had safety concerns. But in doing so, we said, you know what, let's take this, let's get all these kids to the colleges. And one of those kids we just had on the stage, and she talked about she went to DSU, fell in love with it, never had thought even about DSU. We would have lost this kid probably to someplace in California because she's super, super smart, okay? But fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the kids that were walking her around, and now she's going to stay here. Now, the goal is, after 4 years, can we keep her here for a job? So with that, so we are coming to the close. I just want to thank, again, Katie and Jim, thank you for sharing your experiences, for sharing all this information. This is an evolving area. This is a high growth employment area too for all of us. And we really do, as we see that our economy diversifies, as our population diversifies, what can we do to keep these jobs and these wonderful people here? So thank you.
How do we deliver best-in-class products today while keeping an eye on the horizon of Earth industries? By using everything at our disposal. Because at Viaflex, creating innovative solutions to complex customer challenges is why we exist. Viaflex, protecting Earth, promoting industry.
Home. It's more than an address. It's where you step out and snuggle in, or you share and dream and do. So you shouldn't have to go far from home when you need care, whether it's for something common or complicated. We believe you deserve world-class healthcare, no matter where in the world you live, because every patient, everywhere, means the world to us. Here for all, here for good. Sanford Health.
Since 1956, Aerostar has been challenging the limits of technology.
Aerostar is an aerospace and defense contractor that works on high-altitude stratospheric balloons, radar systems, and protective wear. And our mission is to connect, protect, and save lives.
Today, Aerostar is a diversified technology company that continues to be a world leader in the design, development, and manufacturing of aerospace products. For decades, Aerostar has been at the forefront of high-altitude research and has a distinguished history of collaborating with university, scientific, and military partners.
Back in 1956, there was a lot of new technology being developed. There was a lot of testing for pre-NASA space race scientific research. Some of the first work that they were doing with the high-altitude balloons was before they had put people up in rockets.
For years, Aerostar has collaborated with NASA to use high-altitude research balloons in Antarctica. Felix Baumgartner was carried by an Aerostar balloon to the stratosphere, from which he completed his record-shattering space dive. Aerostar has spent decades refining high-altitude balloon technology, designing, engineering, and manufacturing the end product. It is a technology that can get balloons to the stratosphere reliably, inexpensively, and from anywhere in the world.
A satellite is reasonably expensive to put into space, and it doesn't just happen quickly. The balloon is orders of magnitude cheaper than that. What a balloon can do is it can navigate to a certain point that you can specify, and it can linger there for weeks or months on command. I can put it where I want it or in the vicinity of where I want it for a long period of time, reasonably inexpensively and with short notice.
The possibilities only grow as Aerostar develops smaller hardware and smarter technology.
We say not even the sky is the limit. If you take what we know about flying in the stratosphere that we didn't used to know, add into that better battery technology, better solar technology, better computing and navigation smarts, I think there's a lot that can be done that hasn't been done before.
Finding a place to belong is everything. It's where you can make a difference, where you're heard, where you have a team that supports you, and the benefits you deserve. At Avera, you can find that place. You belong at Avera. Apply today. avera.org/careers.
Oh, hi there. We are Daktronics. We create some of the most sophisticated and iconic scoring and audiovisual systems on the planet that ensure your projects deliver impact. We're a passionate group of designers, fabricators, project managers, sales, service, digital artists, tech gurus, and engineers. We design, code, test, fabricate, bend, punch, insert, paint, pack, ship, install, and service dynamic audiovisual systems. Oh, and we also create the incredible content that goes on them. We do everything, but most importantly, we listen to our customers and together find successful solutions for their brand and messages to deliver impact. From the small projects to the large, that's what we do. We innovate, we design, and we light it up. We are Daktronics.
At Premier, it's about doing what's right for our customers, employees, and communities, giving our time and resources to support what matters most: academics and athletics, arts and entertainment, families and economic development. When you have the right people, financial solutions, and a spirit of service, you build one of the nation's strongest financial organizations. First Premier Bank and Premier Bank Card. Investing in you. Member FDIC.
Today we are in Hartford, South Dakota, extending our services to the community here to bring high-speed internet to them. Some of the work they've been doing today is a little hard, a little difficult. Drilling, hooking up to inner duct, pulling it back, setting vaults, pulling fiber. Terrain's a little rocky out here, but they got plenty of guys out here to get the job done.
As a Hartford representative, it's very important for our residents to have a good quality of life. Part of that quality of life is having high-speed internet.
When you think about a state like South Dakota that's very dependent upon agriculture, it's essential that we have great connectivity into these rural markets.
The combines, the different equipment is using software, and so broadband is very needed in those areas.
Our customers rely on our products and services for so many things: education, work, healthcare, and even play.
Our employees live all across the footprint, and we're involved with everything in day-to-day operations, but really outside in community involvement.
We do have another entity too, Midco Sports, where we come out and we broadcast local high school, college games. I'm invested, I live here, and I want to be able to provide services to the community.
I love working with the Midco team. They have been nothing but fabulous individuals in our community. They have volunteered for different opportunities, so we really are grateful that they have partnered with us in our community.
I'm really proud of the projects that we do to bring rural broadband to these communities because I see it as an enabler for them to continue to grow and thrive for years to come.
We're dedicated, we're experienced, and we're local. So we're not going anywhere.
We've been a part of rural North Dakota and rural South Dakota for nearly 100 years, and we're going to be here for the next 100.